The sound of a chainsaw, I swear, still haunts me sometimes, like it's burned into my bones. It was just before 8 on a Saturday morning, and I remember because that's not when you expect war to break out in a peaceful suburb. I was in my kitchen, coffee in hand, thinking about nothing more than pancakes and maybe catching the ball game later. But all those plans went out the window the second I heard that motor roar and saw what was happening out my back window. Out there on the grass, standing at the foot of my neighbor's big old oak, was Helen Bixby, our HOA president for as long as anyone can remember, looking like she was possessed by the spirit of the city inspector, the mayor, and the entire U.S. Forest Service rolled into one. She had a chainsaw in both hands, eyes wide with fury, and she was cutting, not just trimming, cutting into the supports of a kid's treehouse. Now, you gotta understand, this wasn't just any treehouse. My neighbor Matt Reynolds and his 8-year-old son, Eli, built that thing together over spring break, just the two of them after Matt's divorce. Eli's a sweet kid, obsessed with superheroes and building stuff, always out in the yard with his dad. I watched them put that little fort together from my deck. A simple wooden platform, some walls, a rope ladder, a flag that said Eli's Outpost. Honestly, it added a little life to our otherwise cookie-cutter neighborhood of perfect lawns and identical fences. But for Helen, our ever-vigilant HOA boss, it was a declaration of war against everything she believed in. Uniformity, order, and her own personal interpretation of community standards. She'd run the Maple Creek HOA for 15 years, an iron fist in a pastel polo shirt, rules always in one hand and those passive-aggressive pink violation slips in the other. The trouble started Monday morning. Matt found a violation taped to his door. Unauthorized structure, no architectural review, potential for property value loss, and, my favorite, encouraging wildlife habitation. He showed it to me over the fence, both of us laughing about how Eli's little hideout might turn our block into a bear sanctuary. But it didn't stop there. By midweek, Helen was out before dawn, parking her golf cart in front of Matt's house, snapping photos from every angle, even measuring property lines with a laser while Eli peeked through his curtains, asking Matt why the mean lady was in their yard. She called building inspectors, code enforcement, the fire marshal, anyone who might listen. All of them said the same. It's private property. It's safe. It's not our business. Helen doubled down. More notices. More drama. She claimed the treehouse violated noise ordinances. Because, I kid you not, Eli laughed too loudly playing superheroes. She said the rope ladder was a hanging hazard. Matt, ever the nice guy, offered to make changes or meet her halfway. But Helen wanted it gone. No compromise, just demolition. Friday, I spotted Helen out front with her nephew Greg, who runs a local tree service. They were pointing, measuring, Greg looking more uncomfortable by the second while Helen waved her checkbook. I should have called Matt, but honestly, I figured no one would be crazy enough to just go tear down a kid's treehouse, right? But I was wrong. Saturday morning, perfect weather, the whole world's still asleep. Matt's making breakfast, Eli's in the treehouse, I'm pouring coffee, and then the chainsaw fires up again. I see Greg arguing with Helen in the driveway, then storming off, leaving her there with his saw. And I don't know what came over her, but Helen, 68 years old, pressed khakis, HOA logo shining like a badge, dragged a ladder over and fired up that chainsaw like she was about to save the neighborhood from certain doom. She climbs up, yelling about Section 12.4, community standards, the works. I'm yelling from my window for her to stop. Phone in hand, recording because my brain finally catches up and says, someone's gonna need proof of this insanity. Other neighbors come running, but Helen is lost in her mission. And then, crack, the main support beam gives out. There's this awful, sharp noise, and then a scream that just rips through the air. Eli, who is inside, comes crashing down with the whole structure, landing hard, 6 feet onto the grass. For a second, everyone just freezes. I swear, the world stopped spinning for 3 seconds straight. Matt comes tearing out of the house, barefoot, wild-eyed, scoops Eli up. He's crying, holding his arm at a weird angle. Blood drains from my face. I'm calling 911, and so is half the block. Our neighbor Jamie, who's a nurse, comes flying over, kneels down, checks Eli while Matt glares at Helen like he's barely holding himself back from murder. Helen just stands there, chainsaw idling, looking honestly confused why everyone's so upset. She starts talking about how this was all perfectly legal, waving her HOA binder like it's the Constitution. Matt tells her to get off his property, voice shaking with rage. She actually tries to hand him another violation for the debris before Jamie physically shoves her away. Ambulance gets there fast. Eli's got a broken wrist and a mild concussion, but thank God it wasn't worse. The cops show up right behind, 2 deputies, and Matt points right at Helen. I want her arrested. Helen laughs, still playing the part, saying she's just enforcing the rules. The deputies take statements from all of us. I show them my video, clear as day, Helen, chainsaw in hand, cutting down an occupied treehouse. Greg, her nephew, shows up again, says Helen took his chainsaw after he refused to do it himself. Helen keeps waving her bylaws, but the younger deputy finally snaps and tells her, "You're under arrest for felony. Assault on a minor, trespassing, vandalism, reckless endangerment." Helen turns white. She tries to argue, then asks if she can file a complaint against the deputies for interfering with HOA business. They cuff her anyway and drive her off, her shouts about special assessments echoing down the street. By sunset, it's on the news. HOA president arrested after chainsaw incident. By morning, my video is viral. Helen's mugshot, in her HOA shirt, is everywhere. People meme it, comment sections full of horror stories about tyrannical HOAs. Matt hires a bulldog lawyer, files criminal charges and a civil suit. The evidence is overwhelming. Witnesses, video, medical records, even Helen's own admissions. Her lawyer tries to argue she had authority, but the prosecutor lays it out. HOA bylaws don't trump the law, and no HOA rule justifies endangering a child. The trial is fast. Helen takes the stand, still acting like she's in the right, blaming Matt for not following the rules, criticizing the quality of the treehouse she destroyed. The judge isn't buying a word of it. He calls her actions depraved, says she's a danger to the very community she was supposed to protect. He gives her 18 months in prison for felony assault, likely to serve 6 with good behavior, and 3 years probation. She owes $40,000 in restitution for Eli's medical bills and therapy. The HOA's insurance drops coverage. The board holds an emergency vote, and Helen is out, permanently banned from serving on any HOA board anywhere in the state. Her husband files for divorce. She sells their house to cover legal fees, and nobody wants to buy the HOA president's house that everyone saw on TV. A judge issues a restraining order. She can't come within 500 feet of Matt's house or any treehouse, period. At sentencing, Helen's face goes pale. She collapses into her chair, finally realizing her reign of terror is over, for good. And sometimes, when the neighborhood is quiet, I still hear that chainsaw in the back of my mind, a reminder of what happens when a little power goes to someone's head, and a community finally stands up and says, enough is enough.